Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be a part of the 2020 Economic Symposium. My name is Leslie Martinez, and I will be presenting this first part of the workshop on how to invest in yourself. And this is market alignment for the creative entrepreneur. And so the focus of this presentation and conversation is about market alignment and what that means as a creative entrepreneur, how to understand yourself as both an artist and a business owner, and how we sort of navigate that authentically. Next slide. And so one of the first things that we need to do is identify who we are, sort of take an assessment of where we are as an artist professionally. And I've created this artistic creative entrepreneur archetype diagram to kind of identify sort of the natural evolution of sort of the professional artist, from a innate creative to someone who gets paid for the creative skills, talents, or the products that they produce as a result of the creativity. And so the reason why this is really important, I'll just reiterate, is because there are certain skill sets that are developed as we go from creating art for ourselves, and then we're getting more into the commerce and the marketability of what it is we do as a creative. Obviously, this can look differently for the different types of artistry that we have. So it's really important to take this, assessment as a very personal journey, with the goal to be alignment, alignment with who you are, what your values are, where you see your skill sets and capabilities are the strongest. Really kind of tapping into what you want to be bothered with as a creative. Like maybe you don't want to be a freelancer or do design work for a business or something like that. I mean, if that doesn't interest you, it's really important that at this phase you make those determinations so that you can really get sharp with how you're going to operate, both as a creative and artist and as an entrepreneur, a business. And so we're just going to talk through, as you can see on the screen in front of you, there's sort of this range where we go from an artist who is authentically, channeling their creative mind, creative process to express, whether it be singing, whether it be visual artistry. There's all this obviously nuances of what an artist is, or who an artist is. So just understanding that really has to do with you and your identity, and it's singular. That's sort of you as an individual. Now, throughout the development of you as that creative artist, you'll start to understand the skill sets and the development that naturally sort of comes out of your, you becoming a master creator. So initially it's, how many hours or how much time you have in your craft, your ability to do things maybe more efficiently as a creative. Maybe you're learning certain softwares and certain workflows that are enhancing your ability to create. And so oftentimes, and we'll just talk about the trajectory that sort of comes out of your ability to master skill sets as a creative, there are skill sets that are now aligned with certain industries and opportunities with sort of larger facing commerce experiences. And so that kind of emerges, or the artist that's emerging into a creative professional experience where you're being hired to sort of either teach or present your natural creative ability on behalf of a company or on behalf of a larger audience, or these different revenue opportunities, is sort of where we start to see the artist turn into the creative professional. And at that creative professional level, you're really good at, working with a team, you're, leading based on your skill sets, and you're honing that on behalf of a larger entity typically, or you're a freelancer doing things, project-based work, and that's how you're making some revenue. And then you might still have your private practice, your private creative art, but you're also being hired to do things on behalf of a larger company. And so the next step is that after you sort of do that for a while, there's a point where you realize that you potentially, because you are the creative and a lot of your ideas have, sort of been validated, or, you see the potential. A lot of times the next phase of an artist's trajectory is to the desire to produce something for yourself. This looks different for everybody, but this might be, maybe you are a performance artist and you've been working under other companies, and now you sort of have a vision of an original production, something that you're taking your ideas all the way from ideation through the logistics of an event planning, selling tickets, and hosting and producing your own event. So that right there taps into a whole nother realm of skill sets that you as an artist, may not have had, at the beginning of your career. And now you're into what's called a creative producer mode. You're able to facilitate the ideation from a creative innovator, creative area, all the way to the point where you understand all the things that have to happen to produce something that is aligned with a market. We have an audience that's willing to buy tickets, and you sell those tickets, and you perform, and you present this, and now you have just, sort of established yourself as not just sort of the creative or the artist that's part of the team, but more the leader in terms of making the vision happen. And so what happens after that point is, the more you become a creative producer, the more you're producing things and realizing not everything works, things fall apart, things are, you have to start problem solving. There's the next phase where you begin to sort of innovate solutions to these gaps in the market, or gaps in how we do things. Or maybe you develop, a new line of ballet slippers that help the dancer, perform better, or support them, or any type of innovation, because you've produced something and now you need to develop something to make that experience better. That is moving you into the creative innovator space. Now, the creative innovator is it's really about being a problem solver on behalf of, an industry. Not being a creative innovator isn't for everyone. Some people don't want to solve problems for the whole industry. They're very comfortable with just being hired to do the job and get in, get out. Some people don't want to be a producer. They kind of want to work with a producer and sort of add their value, but not be responsible for the whole thing. And so it's really important, when you're thinking about who you are and what you want to do and what the business you're interested in doing is, we have to kind of make an assessment. Are you really sort of just committed to being a singular artist creating work, and people either like it or they don't? Or you sort of have a very clear understanding of what you want to do? Maybe your all of your experiences are leading you towards creating something for your industry, or maybe solving something that has long been overlooked because it's never been designed from the artist perspective. That happens a lot. We see a lot of innovations and new things that come to the market because they're developed from the artist perspective, or from the creative's perspective, and not from, an external source. And so we have all the skill set, and now we have the conversation is, what is the business of what our skill sets are, the business of the innovation and the opportunity, and what does that look like as a creative entrepreneur? And so this is where defining being an artist and being a creative entrepreneur kind of need to be defined. And working with several creative entrepreneurs / artists / creative entrepreneurs, this is kind of where we sort of get caught up, right? The idea is that your artistry is primary. It's who you are, and we're not changing that. And we understand that you as an artist needs to be sort of the center and be the most authentic part of your existence, right? So there's some things that bother you when I and I'm bringing a specific experience when talking with creative entrepreneur who does nail art and is an artist in that nail space, right? And so when I mentioned the word production and having something that at a price point could be mass produced, there was a clinch. There's kind of like, wait, no, and that is understood, because the idea that you are unique and your artistry is an expression of who you are. As an artist, you're wanting to protect that, and that is absolutely valid. And we have to understand where you as an artist are autonomous and where you as the creative entrepreneur is looking for the business opportunity and market alignment in order for you to scale and to make money, leveraging your creative process, creative genius, creative products, right? So that's kind of where these your skill sets are really important to sort of identify. So you can say, I actually want to um, you know create a synergy between being an artist and a creative entrepreneur. So the idea is that in order to create that synergy, these skill sets, if you go back to the slide, where we're just talking about the creative professional, the creative producer, and the creative innovator, if you can take those three veins of skill sets and create a natural partnering with the business side, you can actually unlock sort of the secret of scale and creating autonomy at the same time. Next slide, please. And that's sort of what this economic sustainability diagram here is all about. So you as an artist have the ability to create boundaries around your authentic creative space. If you're a visual artist, what comes out of you naturally, you don't want to mass produce. Maybe you don't want to get into the prints or sort of the mass production concept. You would rather maybe just focus on creating your authentic work uninterrupted by market in this conversation. But the opportunity that presents itself with your aesthetic, let's say, maybe you then create a line. And this is actually something that I've done for myself. So I'm sharing something very personal with how I've thought through my own me as an artist / me as a creative entrepreneur. I've thought through, okay, well, the artwork that I create in the paint and on paper is my safe space for me as an artist. And then the creative opportunity, because I have these other skill sets, what I'm going to lend my business is sort of the aesthetic of my art. So I'm sort of abstracting some things, or I'm converting some of the my understandings into more of a digital art perspective. And then I'm going to lend that to some marketable products. So that's where I'm designing my own, fashion line, where I'm taking some of my creativity, my art motifs, and I'm learning, how to apply that to something that can be purchased globally or sourced at an industry. So I'm looking more at the textile alignment for my creative projects. And so that's just sort of an example of how to find yourself on the spectrum, understand what the skill sets you currently have, and then realize what is it that you want to be bothered with. What do you actually want to do on behalf of the business that isn't going to rob you of your joy, that isn't going to create some sort of tension between what the business decisions need to be and what you as an artist need to be. And that those business decisions are going to sometimes not consider your creative autonomy, but more about what are the intersections between what the audience, your buyers, your consumers, and who those people are and what they're interested in, and then what you have to offer, and then that point in which they buy what you have. That's essentially the goals and objectives from a business perspective. Is, what is the sweet spot? Where are the people that appreciate what you do? Where are they? What do they want? What are their norms? How are they emotionally connecting to your product or your service? And how are you making that transaction happen more efficiently, more often, while you sleep, right? So there's a business experience that needs to sort of be built out, that may be hard to navigate if you have your artist hat on. So I hope that brings a little bit of clarity in terms of why it's important to really sort of align with who you are as a creative. What are the things that are sort of untouchable in terms of your creative, authentic space? And then what are some of the opportunities to scale that that's doable? Another example would be, I have a client who is a tattoo artist, and the tattoo artistry is a physical in-person experience, right? And so that's a very hard market to kind of scale in, because it requires you to be present. It's not mass produced, it's an intimate kind of business model. But when we started talking about what are the products or services that could be leveraged based on this person's knowledge, based on this person's artistry, and maybe some reproduction opportunities. So we started talking about what are the products that could be an extension of their portfolio or opportunity. So I won't go into kind of what we determined, because that's what I do. But I will say that the creativity of understanding how to leverage what you have and align it with what a larger audience, a larger pool of people, more kind of looking at how you can abstract it or create a process so that you don't have to, so that you can make the money from that opportunity and not have it dependent on your physical labor, or the fact that it can make money while you sleep, let's say. So that's the scale. And that's really where you're going to see that type of revenue that's going to increase, your capacity to have more free time. And that's ultimately the goal, to then free you up to be an artist. And so that's what this cycle is really referring to. Next slide. So sort of when talking about these skill sets that sort of go from an artist to the creative entrepreneur, this is sort of what, in a little bit more detail, what we're talking about. So as an artist, your skill sets as a creative. So maybe you're a sketch artist, your fine art experiences. But as you get more into the working with a client as a freelancer, or working under a firm, or however, maybe a dance company or any type of theater company, you'll realize that there's another set of skill sets that need to be developed. Some of them are just what we call hard skills, which is how to navigate certain softwares, technical skills, things that you need to know for the industry. The process mastery has to do with the point of the development all the way to the outcomes that your company wants, or that your client wants. The idea of teamwork is really, really important, because your skill set is typically part of a chain link of things that, professionals that are doing their job in order for the collective outcome, whether it be a show, you're working with other actors. So the idea is that you're really honing in on your capacity to work with a team. That's really important, and definitely valuable. And that's a revenue. There's a revenue stream that's dedicated to the creative professional, and the ability to work autonomous, so self-directed, or with a group. So as you do that for enough times, enough seasons, you'll realize that your skill sets still need to be developed when you're looking to actually branch out on your own as the lead producer of something, of your own ideas, of your own creative venture. This is the point where you go from a creative professional to a producer. Could theoretically be the point where you see yourself as an individual 1099 freelancer, all the way to establishing maybe an LLC or a corporation. Sometimes it comes sooner or later, but the idea is that producing then creates an entity presence that's larger than yourself, and maybe the point at which you're actually walking in the creative entrepreneur's like pathway. So the skill sets that are required kind of transition from more hard skills, or the combination of both hard skills, but also you're expanding your ability to be an effective leader. So now you're leading the team and you're setting the vision goals, and you're being, you know, you're the accountability person, and you're doing the scheduling. These are all soft skills, because if you don't have the skill set, it's quite often that the outcome of the production won't work. So your ability to lead, your ability to teach, maybe bring in interns. Teaching is a highly valuable skill when you're looking for support and help. You also have to maintain your own personal motivation because you're the boss. And not only are you the boss, you're the face of your production. And so that's going to require you to now be the networker, be the person that's meeting with, you know, funders and these other different experiences that maybe you were shielded from as a creative professional. So that's kind of where we see, as a producer, both the creative professional and the creative entrepreneur skill sets start to merge. Now, after being a producer for, you know, a good amount of time, as mentioned before, the next set of skill sets really sort of come into play when you realize that maybe the way that you learn to do something isn't working, or maybe you've created a product based on what you saw was an opportunity that no one else could see. That's kind of where the innovation comes into play. And this is a space where I really get excited, because if you're dealing with this problem or issue, or you're solving for this, it means that there's other industry aligned market opportunities that can really sort of tap into the revenue and the money that can change a life, right? So the idea is scale, and the term scalability is something that's often used in, you know, commerce and business. And it really just means is, how do you mass produce or replicate access, or how can what you create meet the demand of everybody who wants it? So whether it's a physical product, or whether it's a virtual product like a SaaS, a software as service solution, or whether it's you know, how to create an e-commerce platform that doesn't sort of mess up when you can't produce enough at one time. You're really looking at workflows at this point. You're looking for the opportunity to have something work for you while you're resting. And so that's the term scalability. Finding that sweet spot is really sort of what the work is when getting into the strategy of a creative entrepreneur and creative business. So the iterative problem solving, the abstract conceptualizing, the rapid prototyping, the sort of fearless attitude, and the scalable technology are all the next set of skill sets in order to propel you to the point where your business as a creative entrepreneur is generating enough revenue so that your artist self has space and time and money and investment to sort of see the heights of your artistic self. Next slide. So just honing in a little bit more about what is market alignment, and, you know, just kind of based on what we just talked about, really understanding who you are is so pivotal. And I'm just repeating this because I feel like, you know, oftentimes as creatives, we feel this sort of hesitation. There's a conversation about selling out. you know, where we'll do things for the money and it's countering what we feel inside. And so that's why self-assessment is so important, because you have to find the areas where you're willing to, you know, you have the authentic piece, and then you have the part you're willing to lend to your business hat. And then from that point, we can say, well, who else in the industry, like for instance, if you are a visual creative, if you are a painter, let's say, and you have your original works that can be sold, but once it's sold, it's gone. So the idea is, how do you maximize your creativity in creating that one piece? You know, what is the possibilities? What is the scale? Well, that could look like prints. You could find a way to reproduce what it is you've created and then sell that at a different price point to a larger audience. That could be one way. Or you can create a whole, you can understand the digital space and increase your skill set to have another aesthetic, creative aesthetic that's made through a digital platform, a digital creation. Let's say they're, you know, you leverage like your iPad and these apps that they have now, and you're able to create the scalable, you know, create a scalable artwork in vector, or you know, something that can be blown up or shrunken down very easily, or applied to multiple products. So this is the idea of maybe creating a whole new visual aesthetic that can be reproduced without hitch. So then say, okay, well, who is this artwork for? Let's say it's specifically for athletics. You want to design a line of athletics that takes your creative visuals and puts it onto, let's say, jeggings or leggings. Well, that is what we're calling market alignment, because now you have a specific section of the apparel industry. It's a certain experience. There's certain people within that market that you're saying would be interested in what you're creating. That is extremely important in order for your ability to not just create the product, but get it in front of them and get them to buy it and buy into it. That is why market alignment is so important. You really have to focus in on who this is for, what's their motivation, why would they want it, and that's how you really sort of tap into the seamless sales and integration and more business focused models. And it's really going to be the difference between, sort of making money based on what you can do physically, and making money while you're not even thinking about it. So yeah, so I hope that sort of gives you some just sort of, a way to think about yourself as a creative. I think this is the first step that I really encourage creatives and artists to walk themselves through, because the next point, the next determination from this point is sort of the what are we doing, and sort of really sort of unpacking and being specific. And this is where your business strategy, your business plan is going to come into place. Thinking specific about products, maybe it's services, maybe it's a hybrid of both. And then from that point, you can understand how much you're going to need to invest in this idea or this business in order for you to actually launch and move forward. All right, thank you so much. Stay tuned. Next up is a panel discussion led by Sandra Bivens.
Hi, I'm Sandra Bivens, Executive Director of the 51st Street Business Association, and I am welcoming all you participants to the second half of our workshop, How to Invest in Yourself, Your Art, and Your Community. I'm also, we're having me here today as part of our panelists, Mr. Fran Lewis. Mr. Lewis was born and raised in Chicago. He's been professionally working in the music industry for over 30 years, along with formerly co-owning Ivory Pyramid Studios. He has worked with and/or composed and produced music for John Legend, Beyonce, Rihanna, Ramsey Lewis, Jill Scott, Grover Washington, and so many more. He has worked with top executives of every major label. Also, Also, he's managed artist marketing campaigns as part of Disney's Next Big Thing, and that platform has sponsors such as Nike, Adidas, McDonald's, Coke, Chrysler, and Miller. Recently, Mr. Lewis has joined the music programming team at the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events as a policy analyst, and we are so happy to have him with us today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Fran, for joining us. Also with us, we have Ms. Maggie Brown, and Ms. Brown is an accomplished singer, songwriter, stage director, producer, and educator. She is said to be one of the most fiercely committed artists. This is what the Chicago Tribune has said about Ms. Brown. Maggie Brown embodies a powerful and passionate performance, whether she is presenting with her own trio or with Orbit Davis' full 60-piece Chicago Jazz Philharmonic Orchestra. Also, quote from the Chicago Tribune. She has recorded with Abbey Lincoln, Jonathan Butler, Ramsey Lewis, Stevie Wonder, and her legendary father, Oscar Brown Jr. Also on our panel, how are you doing, Maggie? I'm so glad to have you with us this morning.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much. Good morning.
Great, great, great. We also have with us Miss Cinnabella Gill, also known as the Bronzeville Diva. Miss Gill is a multi-award recording artist, and she grew to become a lead voice and producer of jazz after entering the jazz scene after she was awarded the Best New Jazz Artist by KISS FM 106.7 by New York host Kenny Webb. The award set her on a trajectory to not only perform the music, but to capture the aesthetics of it as songwriter and producer. Cinnabella, it's so wonderful to have you with us here today, too.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Great panel.
Yes, it is. And as you know, earlier in our workshop, we had Miss Liz Martinez, and she talked about how you go from a creative professional to a creative producer, a creative innovator, and a creative entrepreneur. And that she's talking more from the theoretical aspect. And now today with you guys, we're going to talk about how you actually implement all those different ideas of being a creative, going from professional to the actual entrepreneur. And so I guess we could start with the question of how do you position yourself for industry partnership and creating and getting connections in this industry? And maybe we could start with you, Frank.
Well, it's less, I think, about positioning and where you've started, where you've been, what your mission was from the onset of starting in your art and your work and creativity. You know, there's the move from being an artist to a creative entrepreneur has many steps in it. And I think starting off at the beginning, it's what your mission was as an artist from the jump, from the start. And many of us started by being gifted knowledge from those that were before us. And because of that, then some of us naturally move into the next step of wanting to share that with others. Mm-hmm. And in that, those steps start to take place. And that's, for me, that's where my story was. I was gifted certain knowledge and things by other people, such as Maggie and other people in my life. And therefore, that trend just happened to naturally take place where I wanted to share some of the things that helped me along my path. So I started networking, and from networking, I moved to really liking to share my knowledge and helping other people. So then it naturally progressed. And that's the way it happened with me. It wasn't something calculated where I said, okay, I'm going to do this at the beginning of my career, then in the middle, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to end up a creative and then a policy analyst. It didn't quite happen like that.
Okay. How about with you, Maggie?
Well, what Frank touched on is the fact that sometimes the seed that's planted in you, it's less about commerciality and more about, even in my case, certainly cultural awareness and upliftment. So that I guess I feel like there was a responsibility, you know, that came with, I had this talent. I had doors open to me because my father's Oscar Brown Jr. and my brother was into music. And so, you know, but then the motivation can be more so to make change in the world, you know, to make music or art or theater productions or, you know, records that will do something to the human spirit. And I think we're fortunate. We're blessed to have had that foundation you know, because some people can sing or, you know, can make songs and they just particularly go at it to be commercial, you know. But I think what Frank was touching on was that, yeah, our blessing is that we had a foundation that even saw our talent and our gifts as you have some responsibility to do some service with that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You think that's the way it happened with you too, Cinnabella?
I don't know that it's exactly how it happened with me. You know, I found out about my grandmother, Finner Brown, as a writer and so forth, as I came into my career. When Google became the big thing and the search engine was there. But certainly in my household, there was always music. There were always creative processes going on. My mother was always, she walked all of her children over to the library, and she'd do drama with Val Gray Ward and different people. So I was exposed to the community, and something in me had a calling for it. And I didn't know early on that I would sing or I would dance or do anything. It wasn't like there was a push for me to do it, but just being so exposed to the arts, having it all around me is what called me into it. And once I got in, it was like, okay, I can make money doing this. That was the first thought. But as I became more involved in it, I realized that I could be effective in other ways. I saw that I could now impact other people with opportunities to do things. And I saw so many people who were disparaging. They didn't even know how they could become seen, how and where they could become seen, and where they could entertain, and what would they do with their music. And I found that it was kind of easy. And so if we just put ourselves out there, that people who liked us would find us, and then we therefore go on and be discovered. But the other part of it was in being discovered and knowing that you want to do something about it so that other people can have it, you start to put together a sort of a plan so that you can start being more involved in helping those to know how to use their talents and where those talents can be best useful in our communities, right? Because we're here in Chicago, at least I believe most of us are here in Chicago. And so it was important to kind of know how to disperse those things and create those things and build those things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that's an important point you all have made, because we are in Chicago, and during the time when we started young, as I myself is a artist, Chicago was more booming, you know, in relationship to accepting the music, getting gigs and things like that. But what I'm noticing now is that a lot of our artists don't understand the business of their art. So what advice could you all give to aspiring Chicago artists regarding their career and positioning their art as a business? Anybody can jump in.
Well, prepare. You have to practice your art. Even when jazz musicians get on the bandstand and they're improvising, they're playing something from right then and there, but it's because they have a mastery of their instrument or of chord progressions, and that's the way that they can be free and still stay in with everybody on the bandstand. And so that's kind of true of even if you're endeavoring to sit down with the Department of Cultural Affairs and try to figure out how, with the budget they have next year, how might your program fit in so that you can be on the calendar of events with an organization like that. You have to prepare yourself, practice your art, and rehearse and all that good stuff, and make yourself available, I guess, to certain networking opportunities, putting yourself in places where stuff is being discussed, where opportunities are being sorted out, or, you know, for lack of a better term. That's, to me, that's one thing. And you do have to have a plan A, B, and C, by the way. You ought to.
And that's important. I'm glad Maggie said that, because you have to be diverse. You know, you have to have multiple plans, but you also have to understand when it comes to monetizing what you do, you have to know the ins and outs of it. And just because you might not know it, or you feel, you know, a lot of people are intimidated by that part. And often enough, I say that you should reach out. Don't try to answer those questions yourself or guess at it, because there's always someone smarter than you that can take advantage of you. So I often enough tell everyone it's worth it if you need to spend a little money and get consulted by a entertainment lawyer. It's worth the pennies that you would drop on that. because they will educate you, even if you're not going to move forward with them representing you. They will educate you on the steps you need to take to incorporate yourself or brand yourself or own your brand, or what does statutory rate mean, what do royalty rates mean. They'll educate you and give you the tools that you can look up yourself. So as you move forward through putting your own music out and being independent artists, you're moving forward with knowledge. You're not guessing at it, because that's where a lot of mistakes are made, when you're guessing at it and you're just jumping in and you're looking to consult with the wrong people that might not have the background or the intellectual property to consult you in what you're trying to do. So definitely make a plan. And when you make a plan, back that with the right people and knowledge to move it forward.
There are a lot of things that you can do. In the beginning, when you start, you're confused by who am I as an artist? The first thing, how to identify yourself as an artist. What is the music genre that you're going into?
What's your audience?
Right. What's the behavior of the people? Who's my audience? Where can they find me? What can I do to make myself visible in that place? What makes me stand out different than say the other artists next to me? There's so many great artists out here on the scene, and you can become kind of like engulfed in sort of a fear about whether or not you can fit into that arena. And so you have to always take these sort of fearless, bold steps forward. You do become able to develop a plan for yourself once you see what it is that you're doing and how you want to do it. And then you have to be excited about it, because if your excitement is there, it'll show up. Right. And you're right, Maggie, practice, practice, practice. For vocalists, what's most important is to find the best pianists, people, the best musicians who can help us to tailor our sound, knowing and understanding, if you don't read music, to understand the basic principles of what it takes to get on a set. If you're in jazz, especially, call a tune and say, I'll do that in D flat, or E minor or whatever. You have to know those things. Then there's working with the people that are in the industry who are at the basic level, because even before you get into the big room, that basic level is going to give you so much homework that once you get in that big room, then it's just about you being the entertainer. And then the rest comes after that. Because if someone discovers you and likes what you do, and for me, I was very blessed early. I had an attorney who liked me, and he became, in principle, my business attorney. Then there was then there was an engineer who passed, and everyone knows him, Danny Leake. I was introduced to him by Robert Hebert and Bobby Irving. And I became involved with really great people who had a good foundation and understanding of the business. And I just sat down and learned. I just took notes. I learned, I walked through it. I took everything they said serious. I made them my mentors, whether they wanted to be or not. I hounded them like crazy, asked the questions, and I learned everything on the fly. As soon as it came to me, I took it, I wrote it down, and I started writing, creating, building, planning, and going out. And I had a great sense of who I was, what my worth was, what I could get. And when I didn't know what my worth was, it was because people didn't know how to value the worth. So there are a lot of things you have to do, and the contacts and stuff just become part and parcel to everything else that you do.
And I want to jump in that there's a step at the beginning that I think it's important, especially for those emerging artists, that you need to be yourself. You want to learn from those before you, but you got to be careful not to copy, because there's only one you. Everybody else is taken. So you've got to be yourself, and know that the fear comes in when most likely you're not being yourself, because the fear comes in when you're trying to be something you're not.
Then you have that dream, that's your dream, and you were given it, you came up with it for a reason, because there's a way to achieve it. Somebody used to say things to me like, singers are a dime a dozen, which was quite discouraging, because come to think of it, you're right, we can just about all carry a tune, right? But there's something that, I have, or that you're going to have, that nobody else knows about, and nobody has it exactly like that. And so, yeah, it takes a passion, a belief in yourself, even when people say little crappy things like that, like, singers are a dime a dozen. Yeah, well, get your dimes ready, darling, because, yep, you haven't heard this one yet. You just gotta
Exactly.
take that, you put that shell on.
But I guess what it
There's
comes down to,
nobody there's no one that has your story, no
yes,
matter what.
yeah.
So, you know, yeah, everybody may have a voice and everyone may sing, you know, and it comes to pass, jazz vocalists sort of know where they are because they're jazz vocalists. They've picked their genre. They know, and there's bebop, there's different genres within that. But when you move into contemporary music, and other folks might be watching this, that's where you have to be very careful, because the pop sound, the R&B sound can be really similar if you don't remain original and understand that nobody else has your story and does it the way you do it. You know, back in University of Miami days when I was there, you know, we were all asked to study the jazz greats. The drummers went to Weckl and all these other musicians, and often not, sometimes they ended up sounding just like the person they were listening to the record. And the point of studying others is not to go back and copy them verbatim, but is to understand their motivation for what they did so that you can take it into what you do and add it to what becomes you. So
that's what I was going to add to that too, Fred. You have to have your own style.
Yes.
I know Maggie when I don't have to see her to know her voice. I don't have to see Cinnabella to know her voice. They don't have to see me to know my voice, because we do have our style. And you're right, there's only going to be one Beyonce. So you don't want to sound like Beyonce. You got to find your own style out here. And I think that's where some of our younger artists are kind of getting confused, because they want to sound like Beyonce. They want to sound like Rihanna. They don't realize that they have to begin to develop their own style so that they are unique and individuals, you know.
And remember, it's not just sound anymore. It's not just sound anymore, because the younger generation, you know, they're not just going off of audio. They're going off of visual. So there's multiple parts of your experience and what makes you you, that you have to be authentic to yourself. The visuals, the marketing, the branding. You can't just copy what the other artist did and make that yours. You've got to put yourself into it.
And I want to add that you can get into something and you may say that I'm a jazz artist, but with so many variations of what jazz is today, you can be a jazz artist in different genres of jazz, you know, and that can be very confusing. So you may get in it and you may start off saying, oh, I'm going to just do from the song, you know, from American Songbook, I'm gonna do straight ahead, I'm gonna do this and that. And then you might find that you're more of a smooth jazz artist and you might not fit into the scene. But today, because because festivals have sort of put everything in one spot, now there's a place for you, but you do have to find out who you are and be distinctive in that and excited, again, becoming excited about. For me, being branded Bronzeville Diva and not being intentionally the Bronzeville Diva was difficult for me. I said, no, I meant that to just be a brand. I didn't certainly mean to be called the Bronzeville Diva. And it was such a heavy title. It meant that I had to do more work, because here I am, I'm on the shoulders of so many dynamic women and men too, to be very honest, who made this music possible. And it's been going on forever. So that meant I had to get into the trunk and really do some work and to make sure that I could hold true to what was out here, you know, so that at least when there was some authenticism attached to me from what I was doing, even though I did find my own style.
You know, and that brings me to the question of, what is it like to be an artist in Chicago specifically? I mean, I know, Fran, you're dealing with all kind of artists, from visual artists to you know, vocalists, you know, the whole 9 yards, you know. So what is it to, how you know, what is it like to be an artist in Chicago specifically, especially at this time?
Well, artists, you know, the artists that come out of Chicago are tough. They're strong. They set the trends that the rest of the nation follow. And I'm biased, so, I know people be like, you're saying that because you're from Chicago.
We come from here and go to the coast. Come on, it's just how it is. Go ahead.
But it's true. You've got to have a strong backbone in Chicago, because we don't we don't have the quote unquote industry right here. You know, the record companies with the big buildings are not on Michigan Avenue. You can't go set up your meetings. You've got to vie for their attention. You've got to make them want to come here to see you or look you up. So, you know, being from Chicago, an artist has to have a strong backbone, a strong sense of self, and a strong sense of purpose, and be very diverse in thinking. But mainly, the ones from Chicago that stand out are the ones that remain themselves. If you notice, you can, and I'll be contemporary with it, from Juice WRLD to Kanye to Common to Polo G to G Herbo. If you look at the artists that come out of here, there's a lot of rap, there's a lot of R&B, but they never duplicate themselves. They're all different. And you wonder how that happens in Chicago, because in our neighborhood, in our communities where we come from, we all have different experiences, but we're all setting trends from here.
Right.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. And, you know, I guess that goes to the question of what are some examples or ways you have seen artists build community wealth in their neighborhood, you know, that have remained in Chicago, but yet at the same time, just like your father, he lives in Chicago, but he has really built his, you know, wealth from actually, you know, being centralized in Chicago, you know, so.
Yeah, I would say that he was always big. And, you know, I have to say this, a lot of people like to put out what they've done for Chicago or how they've supported community. He was always one of those quiet supporters. He would always go back to the schools and go back to the high schools and go back, you know, even at Ravinia, he set up the mentors program. He huge on giving back and pulling up from where he came from. You know, he would always take, go ahead, Maggie.
No, just know that people, that it didn't get announced that we're talking about the one and only Ramsey Lewis is who we're speaking of. That when we talk about your dad, we know who he is and everything. But yeah, just so it's known, that's who we're speaking of. The fact that yeah, as world as he is, as world renowned as he is, he's still, you know, that's part of those seeds that got planted in you and your brother Kevin and Bobby and everybody, you know, just that yeah, you give back. If we don't pass this on and teach an appreciation for this music, how it's made and what it is and what it means to our people. You know, I know I'm this like entrenched cultural artist that I have to look at what has music meant, especially for Black people, in order to survive, all the way back to the days of singing in the hot sun, you know, just our voices crying out. It wasn't about making no charts. It wasn't about selling no units. It was about just keeping your sanity in an insane situation. And I'm always interested in imparting the magic of that, the strength of that, the resilience that comes from that when we do honor this music. This music is not just, you know, it has become for many, you know, a commercial commodity and so forth. But I know that traditionally it's something that helped us to survive. And it can be used in a positive and uplifting way that galvanizes people, unifies people, puts them on the same vibration. And so my thing is, I don't understand why we wouldn't do more of that and just do that instead of making things that are insulting, degrading, and, you know, dividing. You know, so sometimes that's part of what I did. So that's how I feel. So I went and made a show where if I get in front of young people, I'm going to teach them about the history of our music. I'm going to teach them about the resilience of our ancestors. I'm going to teach them that, hey, they use the music in a positive way and you can too. Don't fall for the okie doke. Don't think that you're just supposed to take all your clothes off and shake it and drop it like it's hot and show how close to the pole you can come. No, that is not what it has to be. Don't be tricked into believing that. That's always what I've been about.
And not only that, but I think a lot of people don't understand, well, probably don't know, that most artists always have a job. They don't just
some other income source.
Many of the artists that are heralded here in Chicago are people who actually held down jobs while they were building and making their name. So if you were working in whatever arena you were in, you were also engaging and educating and sharing with the people in your workplace who you were and the kind of music you were doing. And therefore it created a much more widespread base for you and for people to become aware. I've had people say to me, I don't know if I would have ever listened to jazz. Well, I understand that because people don't really always understand what jazz is anyway. Right? Right. And so there are so many ways that we become wealthy in this business, and how we work and build our communities in this business, whether it's through the initiatives of mentoring and helping children, or going and singing at senior citizens' homes where they do know about the music and can teach you more things, whether you're working with community organizations, right? It's all about continuing to just push that arrow forward and to make sure it's going up. And you're right, Maggie, we have to continue to help them to understand that there is an insult to singing and using your voice to hurt people with your music, you know, speaking out and fighting each other with our music, causing death through our music, whether it be rap, whether it be or anything. But we do know that music is impactful and it's important, and we have to continue to go out and work and push it out forward, create it and write it, which is a wonderful aspect of being who we are, and sharing that with one another and working together. That's how we commodify who we are.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, friend.
I think that, you know, you're right. And that's not to negate that sometimes the music is going to be sad. It's going to have death a part of it. You know, it's a story. If that's a part of your story, if the pole is part of your story, then don't negate that. Don't eliminate it. If death is part of your story, don't eliminate it. It's making it up to facilitate being successful is what you don't want to do.
That's really what I mean, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I was just clarifying because some people will grab onto that and go another way with it. But you know, at the end of the day, you just have to remember that we're in a really great time. I know it can seem hard, but listen, before now, many of us didn't have direct-to-consumer capabilities. Right now, you do not have to work for a record label for your audience to experience your music. You know, back in the day, you had gatekeepers, and those gatekeepers would say, I'm going to let these 4 females or these 4 males come out this year, you know, because I like them. I'm going to sign them, and these are the only ones you're going to see come out on a record label this year. What's beautiful about right now is that system has been shattered.
Cyberspace is the place.
Right. Tomorrow, if you want, you can put a song up on iTunes, market that, push it out to your fan base, grow your fan base without any judgment, without any, well, I shouldn't say without any judgment, but without anyone being able to stop you from doing it. But you have to be smart about the way you do it, because, you know, putting things out there without a plan on how to promote it and a plan on how to brand it is not wise. And I think that's an important part.
And you know, and that brings us to the piece I wanted to ask you all about too, is for artists today, whether you're a vocalist or whether you're a sculptor or whatever, with what you're saying, Frayne and Maggie and Cinnabella, what are some of the steps you would tell a young artist today, the steps to get to become successful? I know you mentioned having a plan, Frayne.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first step, I'll let somebody else talk because I've been babbling. The first step I always say is knowing who you are and knowing your instrument or your tools or be the best you can be, and get information from those that have had more experience than you. Get, you know, teaching, get fellowshipping with other artists. I think the first part is a study period, if we're going to be honest about it. But I'll let other people chime in.
I know I was going to say earlier how when I worked in an office job for many years, by typing up the contracts and having to deal with those sort of things, it was the union for set lighting costume designers. So it was, you know, it was still related to the arts field and to entertainment, right? But I gained great skills. I can put a contract together now. I have better mastery of the language that's used in contracts, or just, you know, setting up agreements and that sort of thing. So sometimes there's those things that you might be doing on the way to your ultimate gig that can help inform you and strengthen skills that are needed even in this business.
internships, studio internships, internships with, you know, some of us, you know, weren't just looking for money from our first job, because we understood that knowledge turns into money.
Experience.
So if I could find a producer and that I could contact a record producer and say, hey man, you don't have to pay me. Let me just come to your studio and sit there as the artists come in and out and you record them and you arrange. You know, some of those things, sometimes people are looking for the buck right away, where they understand that's hustling backwards, or that's short-term thinking. Sometimes you got to think of the long term. And the long term is, at the beginning, getting as much knowledge as possible so that you do have longevity. And sometimes that is biting the bullet and saying, hey, I don't need to get paid right off. I just need to be in the room. Because a lot of the knowledge is in that room.
There you go.
I agree with that, but I know coming from my side, my story was, wow, I can make money. I said that earlier. The truth is that I was a young mother. I had 4 children. I needed to make money. I found out that people like my voice and I wanted to sing to make money. Through that lens, I learned about what I was making money at. What did I really care about what I was doing? How can I make this better? How do I want to fit in and stay in? Even with the trajectory being, I'm thinking of money, it will change you. The music will change you. That's one thing is for certain. You cannot get into this business and not be affected by the creative aspect and how it affects people. When I learned how my voice singing a particular song moved people, it was a game changer. That put me to work. Who we become in this business can come from either side. It's just like you said earlier about what is your truth. Your truth may come from death and hardship, you know, but whatever it is that moves us into that we've got to be willing to be on that road. When that fork comes, you're going to have to make that choice. What's the divide? Where you're going to go, to the right, to the left, you know, to get forward, but you will do that. This is a great business. It's a lot of hard work. Never is it going to be easy. No matter how far you get into it, no matter how great you are, there's always going to be another peak of a mountain you've got to get to. It's never going to be easy. You're going to run into a lot of difficult things, people, places, events, things that you didn't feel like you were the best at or involved in, things that people come and do and say things that change you and make you feel like maybe, you know, you've done all you can do or you haven't done the best that you can do. There's a lot of judgment. This business is hard, but it's a great business. It's one of the best businesses in the world you can be in.
And you're right. You know, with your voice, you're able to touch people right away as a fronting of a group or fronting yourself. I was speaking more to those people because we're speaking to many different aspects of the arts here.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to people that are behind the scenes. It's harder for them to get noticed because they're not fronting a group. They're not singing directly to an audience. The producers and the songwriters, they need a little bit more mentorship. They need a little bit more networking. And that's where you find that sometimes being a record producer, you're not going to get paid right away because you don't have that resume. So that when you put yourself next to a Danny Leak for a semester or 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, automatically when you say, hey, Danny Leak, you don't have to pay me, but let me just be your assistant for this next album. Bingo, now you have a piece of a resume that nobody can mess with. I was Danny Leak's assistant for so-and-so's album. So there's different ways of working it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because I can say that I did background on Maggie Brown's album, The Great Migration, which you all going to hear at the back of this show. You know, but I agree that this is a hard business and it's a lot to learn. And how much do you think do people need to be educated in relationship to real education, going to college, going to school? Is that, I mean, I know a lot of people make it without it, but do you think it's more important nowadays that they get at least some backup education, you know, as they move forward?
I want to say one thing before we move on. God bless Danny Leak. He's no longer with us.
Yes, God bless him.
And I'm sort of talking about him like he's still around. And I just want to say that God bless him and his family. He's a big loss to the industry. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Shows you that's impact, right?
Yeah.
That's legend. Right. Yeah, that legacy.
I recorded I mean, countless albums with Danny Leak. He was my first engineer. He was the house engineer for Ivory Pyramid for me and my father for years.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to say
You
that.
left so much work for us to do. Can't believe we got to do it without you. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah, Danny Leak is really something. Sandra, what were you saying? You were asking about what was that last one?
Education. How much education do you need
Oh,
nowadays
oh,
in
you
order
said
to actually build your career? Even though I know when your dad Maggie was coming up and Ramsey, and even when we were starting out, we needed some education, but they didn't need any. They just had to have the talent and the skill, and even though
Not true.
your
I won't
father
say they
did.
didn't need
I'm
it.
gonna say this. Your father
Not
did
true.
play piano. I know
Yeah.
that's not true. That's not true. But let's say they didn't have to have it, like I think maybe the young generation need today.
Let me say
Oh,
for
go ahead.
me,
I'm sorry, Mike.
for me, because I didn't finish college, and as well thought of as I am, and as great a gigs as I get, and people refer me, and that's how so much comes to me now. There are those opportunities that I could have maybe gotten this gig over here at this college because I was the perfect person for it based on my experience, but I didn't have that certificate. I didn't have that piece of paper. I didn't, do the college thing. And so it can hold you back. So, sometimes people go back and get these degrees later, because they realize why have that wall that's just holding you back when you're perfect for the job, and it's just because of this credential. So yeah, get the credentials, especially while you're young. Go on and knock that out, and have that, because when it comes to those plan Bs, you might not be able to do the gigs that you want, or things aren't popping off like that, but you can teach. But if you don't have the credentials, you might not be able to get that position to have you in the interim.
Yeah, because somebody will eventually say, send your charts. Can you read the charts? Can you lead this? Can you produce it? And can you lead something? So you have to be ready for that charge when it comes. Yeah.
And this is little known, but my father didn't start off playing jazz. He started off playing classical and learning how to read music first.
Okay.
And then he went into the church when he was 11. But all along, my grandfather was like, you need to still learn how to read. You still know, you need to know chordal structure. You need to know certain things.
Foundation.
So, yeah, you need to know foundation. And remember, there's a different time to the ones we're talking about. They had, often or not, at 18, they had to provide for families. It was a different time in the world. So they will tell you, don't do like me, do like I'm telling you to do. And if you have the opportunity to go to college and you can get that loan or you can get help to do it, you should do it.
Okay. Well, you know what? I do think, though, that looking at the work that all of you guys have done, and definitely Oscar, I know one thing about Oscar Brown Jr., he would play anywhere. You call him, I was doing a backyard thing behind his house, and he would come out and sing every Sunday with us, never asked for a dime because we weren't making any money, And I see, I know Ramsey has done many of that as well, much of that as well. I think that when we talk about giving back to the community, that I think those are the things that are important about giving back to the community, being able to see some great artists, and you don't have to pay $100 to go see them, because they're right there in your own backyard. And I think that's very important.
Jazz in the Alley became like, when it was going on, it was just a little scene. Folks would show up and, oh yeah, this is what we do, until the city shut it down. And now books are written about it, and whole, exhibits and museums, and it's around the world, and it's a big deal. Everybody that turned out to have just hung out on those Sundays in what was called the back alley, or that put their paintbrush on the wall to something that became the wall of respect that's no longer there. And again, they're writing history tributes to these activities. So you never know, that grassroots around the community effort and activity that you're putting on, sometimes it goes down in history because of the impact.
Well, as we're wrapping up now, are there some final thoughts you would like to leave some of our younger artists, and even our older artists that are still trying to make ends meet out here, after years of being out here, So some final thoughts you'd like to leave for everybody?
For me, it's really simple. true failure is giving up.
Mm.
You're not going to get a yes. Most people get more no's in entertainment and in the creative arts than they do yeses, but you only need one yes.
That's
You only
true.
need one big stepping stone to success. But truly, if you love what you do and it's in you, deep in you, don't give up, no matter what. No matter who says what, don't give up. I'm telling you that you will succeed in some level in what you do.
That's right. I want to say a quote from Oscar Brown Jr. He said, "I may not make it if I try, but I damn sure won't if I don't."
There you go.
You got to, you know, you got to try. And I never mean to insult my young people when I talk about, I get real vehement about that, the subject of like, y'all, please, could we just make some music that uplifts us? Could we make some music that doesn't make us feel low down or you know, project us as low down, because we're not, you know, and I think you're just being tricked into thinking that's all we want to hear, y'all. And that's not, we want to hear that good stuff, because that's really what we come from. That's what this music has actually been. And when you do stop being true to yourself and you're just more of a commercial focus, then yeah, you'll fall for anything.
And keep on pushing. I'm sorry, Cinnabella, keep on pushing no matter what. Don't let people, because you're African-American, tell you can't be Lenny Kravitz. Don't tell them you can't be, you know, a pop star. You can't be a rock star. It all came from us anyway.
That's
so
true.
Don't tell them that you can't be. I'm
So
done.
I'll feed from that frame because it's important that success starts when you start. Success is exactly when you start. And whether you know it is your trajectory or not, just do it, have fun with it, keep going, engaging with it, believe in yourself and what it is that you're doing, even when other people are naysayers, and know that there's something that is absolutely uniquely qualified in you to get out there and do it. Everybody is going to hear a different voice anyway that moves them, motivates them, and causes them to become spirited to go forward and do what they see you doing. So all you have to do is just be willing to keep trying, going, and having the faith that you can do it. It really is a great business to be in. And hey, I tell anybody, on my lowest day, music has saved my life.
So one thing I'd like to take a minute to thank all you guys, Maggie, Frayne, Cinnabella, for being with us today.